Okay, so you can see again the name of our class obviously is Nabhari, and there's something written underneath there, Dahlut Amlam. Now, can anybody remember what the adverb quickly is? Milmal, yes. So milmal is quickly. Why am I asking you this? And I don't want to put anybody on the spot here. Why am I asking you this? Is because if you look at the word amlam and then you recall the word quickly, which is milmal, so there's MLM in this word. There is also the same structure seen in milmal. You need to ignore that last L in milmal because that's the sign of the adverb. It just shows you that it's one of those specific adverbs. So this has something to do with the concept of velocity, speeds, doing things quickly. And that's exactly what it is because the word amlam means speed, means velocity. That's what it means. So dahlut literally there is comes from du ahlut. So du is to and ahlut is take. So to take velocity, to take speed, to go quicker, basically. That is what it means. Tahlut amlam. Now, don't panic. It doesn't mean that we're going to go quicker through all the material. It means that we're going to step up the pace on certain elements, but not what the amount of content is concerned. Well, actually, in my view, the biggest, the most packed content that we've seen was actually the last lesson. Lesson 2 packs a lot of things in because we kind of need it as building blocks for the next lessons. This one is not as jam-packed, and there's a reason for that because we want to take some of the stuff that we've seen in lesson 1 and lesson 2, and then we're gonna build upon that. So that's the element here of we're taking speed on that. We're picking up a bit of velocity on those sections, and you'll see when we go through this what I mean with certain elements that we're revisiting and then expanding a little bit on that. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. Okay, so first things first, let's review the exercises. So agaganu tafani. And the first thing was the counting answers. A lot of people, well, actually, the vast majority of you had that right. Some people were overthinking the concept of what we need to do with the numbers, and it was simply look at these numbers that you have, and then see the 3 smallest ones, add those up, and then what number you get, translate that into Neo-Khuzdul. Or look at the numbers that you have there, what are the 3 biggest ones, add those up, and then give me that translation in Neo-Khuzdul. So these were basically what we're looking for. Again, one of the questions there, a lot of people had right, and it was still marked wrong, so I took that into account. So smallest plus largest, that would have been 344. So Ramek Zakem Gemmihok. Now, a lot of people, which is for me really a minor thing, it's not a major problem. A lot of people had the hyphenation wrong. There's a rule for this hyphenation, which was mentioned in the documents, but I just want to go through it again. Simply said, if you have clashing consonants, rather, like gem and mihok, you're going to add a little hyphen between those in the hundreds, for instance. You're going to add a little hyphen there, gem mihok, to clearly state, okay, it's 300. You don't need to do that with ramek sakem because the KH sound or letter, if you will, and Z do not clash. They're not identical, so there's no problem there. You do need to add a little dash there between Ramek Sakim and Gemmihok, and that is because to clarify, we're talking about a number over 100, just to, for clarity, really. That's it, because otherwise you get a lot of letters in one row, and just to make sure that is, clear, you're hyphenating anything over 100 just before you hit the amount of hundreds. Let me put it that way. So just in this case, just before gem of gemmihok, the amount of hundreds, you add a little hyphen to indicate, okay, what comes before is the units and the tenfolds, and what comes behind or after that is the hundreds. Then the three largest one was hadet hadem gamek mihok. Now, why do we not add a hyphen between gamek and mihok? Because the KH sound and the M of mihok do not clash. There's no need to do that. While with gemihok 300, you did have to do that. And again, we will add a little hyphen before gamek mihok because to separate it from those units and tenfolds. So once you have a number over 100, that is what you need to do. Then the three smallest ones was zetagem. Some of you wrote that with capital letter, without. Honestly, that doesn't matter. And the glottal stop is required there. But most of you had that right. Most of you wrote that exactly right, but for some reason the test marked it wrong. So I did take that into account. So these are the answers. Again, the exercise was not a mathematical thing. That was not the point of it. The point of it was to understand the logic of this abacus. So you have an abacus. The idea, the concept of the abacus is merely only made for you to understand how the numbers work. So the smaller ones on your left, the bigger numbers on your right. And this abacus shows you the same thing. So it's more of getting the concept and not about the mathematics. I mean, I couldn't care less about the mathematics. Okay, so some notes on this. Apply the hundreds boundary hyphen rule, meaning, if it's over 100, put a little hyphen in before it, just to indicate, okay, these are the units and the tenfolds on the left, and these are the hundreds on the right. There's no space inside compounds. Some people wrote ze and then tagem with a little space in between. If there's a compound, hadet, hadem, ramek, sakem, zet, agem, they're put together. It's like 15. You're not going to write fifth and then teen, right? It's one thing. And then use gem mihok for 300 and gamek mihok for 500, or etc., meaning that if you have consonants that clash because they're duplicates, they're the same, then you need to hyphenate that for clarity. Okay, so that's, again, a lot of you had that right, so I don't see any major issues there. So his hair is long. Zanathu tati sigin. Now, another issue that we had was, when do we use tati? When do we use tatia? Now, this one, everybody used tati, which is, you can't really go wrong here, because hair, by the way, it's not because it's his that you use tati. It is because it is, we're talking about the hair, and there's no gender to it. And that's why you use tati. There's another example there to focus on that a little bit more, which is this one. Her name is beautiful. Now, imun dia, a lot of people had that correct, right? The imun is name, and then dia is her, so her name. Abnamul, everybody had that correct. What a lot of people didn't have correct is the fact that you have to use tati here. And the reason why you need to use tati and not tatia is whether it's her name, his name, your name, that really is irrelevant. We're talking about name. It is beautiful. It's the name that is beautiful. It's not her. I mean, she could be beautiful, but we don't know. It's the name is beautiful in this line, right? So it is beautiful. The name has no gender, right? And the thing is, with Neo-Khuzdul, the gender is very, very easy compared to any other language that has genders, which is fairly simple. If whatever it is has an actual gender, so it's actually male and actually female, then you'll use the male or the female gender form. Otherwise, you will not, and you will use the neutral form. Now, might be a little bit confusing because the neutral form tati is also used for the male form, but that is the way it goes. That's the rule. If something has no gender, then simply it is, which is tati. So a lot of people had that one wrong. I can see why, because you see, okay, her, oh yeah, it's her, so it's tatia. No, we're not focusing on the subjects or the owner. We're focusing on or we're not focusing on the object or the owner, but on the subject itself, which is name. So her name is beautiful, Imundia Tati Abnamul. Then my school is old. The vast majority of you had that one right. Finine Tati Gamil. Then your sister is friendly. Nana Zu Tatia Bahul. Here, I speak to him loudly. Most of you had that right. Aglibihu. I speak to him. And then loudly is Zimral. Now, the thing is, a couple put the who on the adverb. So, Aglibi Zimral hu, that's not the case. So you never add anything to your adverb. You never add anything to what it is that tells you more about this verb. You're going to add it to the actual verb. So it's I speak to him loudly. It's not I speak loudly him. That's not it. So aglibihu zimral. She speaks to her slowly. Taglibia dia sipkal. Now these are those typically very long, stretched out verb forms. Taglibia dia, after a while it kind of rolls off the tongue. You have taglibi, which is basically for it and he. Then you add a ya for the female, taglibia. And then you add, in this case, dia for her. We're speaking, or she is speaking to her. So taglibia dia. So taglibia dia sipkal, and sipkal being slowly. And then we have the you form. Again, if you're having trouble with this, the second person is you, the third person is he or she. And that's a way to remember these, actually, because second starts with an S. So you, all these forms start with an S. Saglibiadia. The third person, he and she, or it's third starts with a T, and these forms start with a T. Taglibiadia, right? It's one way of remembering it. If you know that second person is you, third person is he, it's, then that's one way of remembering it. At least worked for me back in the day. So saglibiadia, milmal being quickly. 7 old dwarves. Some minor issues here with the order. Always remember it is who, how many, what kind. So who is, in this case, dwarves. How many? 7. What kind? Olds. So Khazad, Hadid, Gamil. Dwarves, 7 olds, to be exact. That's the noun, number, and adjective. That's the order. And there's no exceptions to this order. If you in English have a noun and an adjective and a number, then that's going to be your order in Dwarvish. 2 loud sisters. Nanna nu zammer. Again, who, how many, what kind? Who, how many, what kind? Who, how many, what kind? Can't repeat it enough. It should be a mantra. Nanna nu zammer. 2 loud sisters. Okay, that would be it, I think, for this. Then let me move forward. Okay, family relations and common mistakes common mistakes for all of the exercises. The family relations one is probably the best part for everyone. Very, very few mistakes, and those that made mistakes were because they forgot the construct form. So to add the you, to say brother of instead of just brother, for instance. So let me go through these a bit more quickly. So Girena, Tatia, Gilta, you had to add something in there. So Girena is the aunt of Gilta, and that's why it's Irak Amadou. So you had to add that u, which is the construct form. Construct form basically means something of. That's basically what it means. And why do we say construct form or construct state? because it's not just adding a U. Sometimes it's going to change, like the next example. Gilta tatia gila ra'ili. So Gilta is the sister of Gili and Ili. So its sister is Nana, but sister of is Nanu. So again, we lose that one vowel at the end before that glottal stop and just becomes a U. So we're not going in a lot of detail of the construct form, but to be honest, we've just seen two types at this point, which is you take the noun and add a U, which is like, for instance, Adadu, Amadu, Karmu, Yandu, etc. Or it ends with a vowel and glottal stop, and then you just change that last vowel to a U. So those are the two forms we've seen so far. And both of these forms mean something of, nephew of, brother of, son of, sister of, etc. That's what it means. So next one, ugromi tati, and then we're looking for what you could fill in. Here are a lot of possibilities. You could say yandu dashatu, which means son, or nadanu, child of. You could also have used that. Ugromi is the child of Alma. That was also an option. Gili tati ugromi. Here, there was only one option, which is Irak Dashatu, which is nephew of. For son, you could use Yand or Dashat, but with nephew, it's only Irak Dashatu. So just so you know, that Yand form, that Ereborian variant, if you want, is not applicable to nephew. Then the last one, ugroi rather, tati ugromi. We could have used karmu or nadadu, brother of. So those were the options there. So the common mistakes that we've seen is when forgetting the final U in relations words. So this construct states, construct form, often just omitting it. Well, not often, but every now and then some of you forgot to add that. Mixing the masculine and the feminine forms of your was also a common mistake in the exercises. Omitting hyphens in the numbers bigger than 100 is also one of the things that was frequent. And then the incorrect noun, number, adjective order. So it's always who, how many, what kind. That's the order. And then leaving out the glottal stop. That was also one that came back a few times. Right, so these are the repeat of the exercise. A little bit of the repeat of what we've seen with the first lessons. So as you know, the to be form, and by the way, one thing that I want to point out is tati, to be. Now, we know tati as he is or it is, but that's also the word used to describe the verb itself, right? And that is always going to be the case. Your neutral or third person male form, tati in this case, is the name of the verb, which is similar to what you see with other Semitic languages like in Arab, where they also use the third person form male to indicate what the verb is. So in English, you have to be, to eat, to smile, to... Well, in Neo-Khuzdul, that's always the third person form of that verb, which is the name of the verb. Okay. So when we say the verb tati, it means the verb to be. Okay. So the forms that we have here that we know is ati, I am. We add an S for the second person sati, which is the male, you are. We add ya for the female variant of that. So you... and then directing that at a female R. Then the third person, the T of third, tati, is he or it is. Again, that's also the name of the verb itself. This is a third person male, is the name of the verb, tati. And then again, we're going to add ya to indicate female. She is. Now, what we're going to do now is move this into plural. So that's, again, where we go with the concept of the lesson is we take what we know and we're going to expand that a little bit. So the plural of the first person, we are, is you basically have your singular, ati, and you add an M. It becomes mati. Mati means we are. Then if we look at the plurals for the male and female you forms, what you see is basically you're adding an N at the end. In the case of the male form for to be, there's a little bit of an exception because we're extending also that vowel. So instead of tati, it becomes satin. And satya becomes satyan. So we add an N there. That vowel does not get extended. Okay, so that's a little trick, little thing that you need to remember there specifically for the male you, that this extends also that last vowel. So, and then we look at the third person plural, they. You see the same thing happening as with satin. You have tatin, which is a they, the males are, and you have tatian. So pretty much identical to satyan, but then of course with the T of the third person. Tatian, they, females are. Now, one thing is important to note here. If you have 500 people in a group, one of them is male, it will take the male form. I know that's incredibly sexist, but that's how a lot of languages work, including this one. I didn't make up the rules, folks. Some of them, but not this one. With tatin, so if you have a group of, let's say, 2 guys and 5 girls, it will be they, the male form that you use. Only when you have a group exclusively of females will you use the tatian, the female form. Same with you, the male form. If you're addressing a group of people, and you're saying you are beautiful, for instance, satin abnamul, that group of people could be male and female. But if you say satian abnamul, then everybody in that group is 100% female. It has to be, because otherwise you cannot use satian, right? So to be clear, when it's male or a mixed group, it's the male form. When it's exclusively female, you're going to use the female plurals. Now, what we're going to do as well is try to combine that with the akaras, with the pronouns. Ins akaras as pronouns. So, this we know. E is my. Zu is anybody? Yep, exactly. Then Z is the female version of that. Who? Anybody want to give that one a go? Yep. His or its could also be, right? Because don't forget, the third person male form is also used for the neutral. It is, right? Like his, its, in this case, or him even, if you add it to verb. Then dia is that female version, her. Now, if we look at those pronouns, our, so remember that we said, what do we do with the verb ati? So the verb tati in the I form, I am, ati, we added an M to make it we are, right? This is kind of what it is, but it's not me, it's ma. So we add an M as well, but yeah, it's not, the logic doesn't follow completely through, sadly. So you have a, my, and then ma, our. So if I say my house, I say zahare. If I say our house, it's zaharma, right? So that's what we add as the pronoun to our noun. So if we want to add plurals to these second and third forms, so what you see is that it's fairly simple, because with all of these, you just add an N, right? It's something that was similar in the verb form, in tati, that you saw that an N was added there as well. Here as well, zu becomes zun, zi because zin, hu, hun, dia, dian, right? Again, with there, if one of the people in the group is male, you're going to use hun. If it's completely female group, then it's dian. Okay, so keep that in mind. Right, okay, now we're going over to the amzar galabi. Amzar meaning something related to work, and then the galabi is words. So working words, the verbs, right? Amzar Galabi. So we know this. Aglibi, I speak. Saglibi, anybody want to give it a go? Yep, exactly. You, specifically the male in this case, speak. Saglibia, it's a female version of that you. Then the next thing would be he or it speaks. Anybody want to remind us what that is? Taglibi. So taglibi is he or it speaks. And then we add a ya for the female, which is she speaks. Now, we're going over to the plurals on this one. Now, what do you think we speak would be with what we've seen so far? Exactly, maglibi, because we added an M with ati, right? Ati became mati, right? The my is ma, our. So you have also always that M with the we. So aglibi, I speak, maglibi, we speak. And then saglibi becomes saglibin. We saw that as well with satin. So one of the things that for these U forms plural, that last vowel becomes longer. So we had sati becoming satin. We have saglibi becoming saglibin. Then saglibiyan, simply add an N for the plural. Then taglibi becomes taglibin. And taglibia becomes taglibiyan. We add the N. So with all of these, you add an N apart from the first person doesn't have it. So first person plural, which is we, doesn't have that N. You didn't see it either with the tati form, where we said I am is ati, which is the singular first person. The plural first person, which is we, you just add an M in front of it, and it becomes mati. So it's not matin or anything like that. It's just mati. Same here. Aglibi, first person singular. We want to make that into plural. We speak. So first person plural to be exact. You just add the M. So it becomes a maglibi. So that's the only exception that doesn't have an N in the plural, which is the we form. Okay, we're going to see a new verb, tatmani. Again, tatmani means that if you know that the verb name is tatmani, you already know one of the forms. Do you know which form this is, tatmani? Yes, so he or it dwells. So the name of your verb is always going to be the third person singular. So in English, it's to something, right? To be, to dwell, to eat, to sink, to whatever. It's always to something, and that's the name of your verb in English. While in Neo-Khuzdul, it's the third person singular. Whatever that form is, that's the form. That's the name of your verb, right? So if we say we're going to go over the forms tatmani, kind of handy because you already know one of them, which is tatmani, he or it dwells, because that's identical. That is the name of your verb. So if you go over these, what do you think I dwell would be? If you see this form tatmani and you know tatmani is he or it dwells, what do you think I dwell would be? Atmani, exactly. So I dwell, atmani, right? So we're seeing the same structures again and again, right? Atmani, so is I dwell, or I live in, right? Satmani is you, male form, dwell. We add ya for the female version of that, you, the female, dwell. Then tatmani, you see, this is the form that is actually the name of the verb, to dwell, tatmani, he or it dwells. And we add ya to it for the female version. So she dwells, tatmaniya. Then adding an M for that plural. So we, not I, we dwell. Now, can one of you be very brave and go through the plurals of these forms? Or give it a go, at the very least. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, a couple of slip-ups on the pronunciation, but bang on with meaning. Satmanin, again, You, so you plural, right? So in English, it's all, you has, well, in the past, it used to have several forms as well, but got simplified over time. Here in Neo-Khuzdul, you have plural form, a male form, and a female form. So this satmanin, when we're addressing a group of people, which are male or a mixed group, satmanin. And then satmanian, here you just add the N, while with the satmani, you dwell, satmanin, you extend that last vowel, which is the I of satmani. So it becomes satmani, and then you add an N to indicate the plural, satmanin. So you, female, dwell is satmanian. Then tatmanin, as you said, you have to extend that last vowel for the male of forms. They dwell, and then for the female, you just add the N. They, the females, dwell. Then we are going to put that into practice. We have a little bit of a map here, or a section of a map of Middle Earth, and I will give you a couple of locations. We have the question, Kur Tatmanin. So Kur is where. That's the key question of this lesson, where. So Kur Tatmanin, where do they dwell? So we saw that Tatmani is he or it. So it's the form to dwell, right? Tatmani. But it says Tatmanin, they, the males or mixed group. Like in this case, I mean, not everybody in, I don't know, Erebor or Rivendell or Dale is male, obviously. It's always, we're using this male form to indicate, well, in this case, it's a mixed group of they, right? Not just specifically male. So let's go over the names here of these locales. So Bitkeen. Bitkeen is a name for Bree. Bitkeen is a name for Bree because it means place of crossing. Where you see this pink or pinkish, purplish dots, and then you see the yellow dot for Bree, and then you see this light blue dot for Rivendell. There's this line that follows, right? That line is the Great East Road, right? So it goes all the way from Thorin's Halls. Well, you can't see it on the map there. From Thorin's Halls to Hobbiton to Bree to Rivendell, and then through Mirkwood, or part of it at least, to basically Erebor and beyond. So the Great East Road, this east to west or west to east road. And then in Bree, you see that there's another, so on the yellow dot, which is Bree, you see that there's another road coming from north to south, which is what is called the Greenway, connected back in the day, Fornost, which is now an abandoned ruin in the Third Age, to the lands further to the south, eventually ending up in what is Dunland and Rohan, etc. So this Greenway and the Great East Road, they cross there. And that's why Bree is a place of crossing. So literally, Bitkeen means place of crossing. So it refers to these two very important trading routes, which are no doubt important as well to Dwarvish traders. Then the next one is Malkun Itnin. Now, even if you don't know what Itnin means, you would be able to kind of make out that we're talking about something to do with hobbits. Because the word Malkun means hobbit. Right, so Malkun Itnin, notice that you lose the extended vowel on Malkun, by the way, because there's already an extended vowel in the word Itnin, which is a bit of a special rule if you combine two words into a new compound, not specifically for pronouns, by the way, but if you combine two specific nouns like Malkun and Itnin, the first extended vowel, so the extended vowel of the first words are removed, like Khazad and Doom. They both have extended vowels. You put them together, Khazadum. The extended vowels of the first word disappear. That's a rule in Khuzdul, and you see it's happening here as well. So like Khazad, dwarves, Doom, halls, put them together, Khazadum. The first, the meaning of the thing is still the same, but your extended vowel disappears in the first element. Same here, Malkun Itnin. Itnin basically means, well, literally means a town or man place. That's what it means. So even though they're halflings, the term for town is literally man place, itnin. So Malkun itnin means a hobbit town, so hobbiton. Then this is a fair jaw cracker, if ever there was one. Buzra burmu bizar. Buzra burmu bizar, Rivendell. So literally means, Buzra means deep, then burmu is cleft, and then bizar is dale. So Buzra burmu bizar is literally deep dale of the cleft, which is the actual meaning of the Sindarin name Imladris. So Imladris, literally translated, becomes a Buzra burmu bizar. That's a jawbreaker, but yeah, that's what it is. Now, bizar, the last element of that word you will find is the exact word for the next town, which is Dale. So Dale, the word means bizar. Then Thorin's Halls, we've already seen that. Thorinul Doom. And then the halls of Erebor, Urdek. Can anybody remember, by the way, what the mountain itself was called? Yep, exactly. Urd. So the mountain itself is Urd, and then the halls of Erebor, the halls of the Lonely Mountain, is Urdek. Then the last one is Zirin Hanad. So Zirin is the word for iron, and Hanad is hills. Sometimes also referred as Urad Zirnul, but that's a form specifically to those dwarves of the Lonely Mountain. But the general form is Zirin Hanad. And by the way, all of the things that I'm mentioning here, like forms Urad Zirnul and that Buzra Burmu Bizar, is also the exact same thing as Imladris. No need to specifically note that because that's in your notes. That's in the post-class notes as well. Just saying. So what we're going to do here, folks, is we're going to use with the word ni, and ni means in. It's a very easy one to remember because it's just the opposite of the English word. So in ni. We're going to try to make a line here that includes these names. So let me start you off with the first one. These dwells in Erebor. These Tatmania ni Urdek. Right? So again, the verb is Tatmani. We're using the third person female here. So she dwells Tatmania ni Urdek. So these dwells in Erebor. These Tatmania ni Urdek. Right. I'm going to do another one together here. Fili and Kili dwell in Thorin's halls. So, Fili ra Kili Tatmanin ni Thorinul Doom. Now, there's two guys, they dwell in Thorin's halls, right? They dwell. So, the they form, the third person plural, is Tatmanin ni Thorinul Doom. Right. Who would like to try this one? Hobbits dwell in Hobbiton. Now, the name Hobbiton is listed above, so that might help you with the word for hobbits as well. So the only thing you really need to figure out, also the word in is also listed on this slide, ni. The only thing you need to figure out is which form that we're going to use for dwell. Is it Tatmani? Is it Tatmanin? Is it still something else? So first of all, hobbits, it's the plural. So Malkun is singular. It means a hobbit, right? So hobbits, can you remember the plural form? It's Malkan. You have Malkun is the singular, and then Malkan is the plural, right? So hobbits dwell in Hobbiton. So what we're going to get is, if the slides wants to work along, Malkan Tatmanin ni Malkunitni. So the Malkan, the hobbits, Tatmanin, they dwell in Malkunitni, in Hobbiton. Okay, Barleyman dwells in Bree. So Bree, we've established, is Bitkeen. It's listed over there. Then the word in is ni. Barleyman, by the way, Barleyman and Barleyman, same thing, just pronounced differently. It's Barleyman instead of Barleyman. So Barleyman. So you only need to do is fill in the form. What do you think it's going to be? Anybody want to give it a go? So if you don't know, which is actually a very good point, Barliman is the tavern keep of Bree, mentioned in the Lord of the Rings as well. So he's the tavern owner of the Prancing Pony in Bree. Barliman Butterbur is his name. But we're, for this exercise, just Barliman as if we know him very fondly just by his first name. So Barliman dwells in Bree, Barliman, and then whatever Tatmani form you think it would be. Yep. So that is Barliman Tatmani ni Bitkin. It's Barliman, he dwells in Bree. So again, Tatmani, he dwells. Obviously, in English, you don't say Barliman, he dwells in Bree. You should just say Barliman dwells in Bree. You don't use that he, but this is the he form. So it's he or it's Tatmani. Okay, so next one. Arwen dwells in Rivendell. Now, I don't envy anybody trying to pronounce Rivendell, the fair jawbreaker it is, but double bonus points and extra congratulations from me, whoever gives it a go. Arwen, by the way, is Arwen. Arwen. Just saying. So Arwen, and then can you think what form it would be of Tatmani that we need? Anybody very brave with double recommendations? We're close, especially with the Buzra Burmu Bizar, which is not an easy one. But yeah, the form you had correct, which was the major point here of our exercise. Arwen Tatmania ni Buzra Burmu Bizar. So Arwen dwells in the Rivendell. Arwen Tatmania. So again, very good here. You had the she form, so you were adding ya to indicate that. Arwen, she dwells in Rivendell. Arwen Tatmania ni Buzra Burmu Bizar. Right. Two dwarves, Alfie and Alma, they dwell in the Iron Hills. Anybody want to give this one a go? Yeah, so Alfie, Ra Alma, Tatmanin. And why is it Tatmanin? Because once you have a group and there's just one male in the group, it takes the male form. So it's indeed Tatmanin and not Tatmanian, right? Because then Alfie and Alma would both be female in that case. So Alfie and Alma, Tatmanin ni Zirin Hanad. Very well. Right. Girion and Bard dwell in Dale. So Girion, I didn't mention what the names were because they're very simple, similar. It's just written slightly different. So Girion, Rabart, Tatmanin, Ni Bizar. So in Dale. Yeah, very good. Last one is another, well, it's not an exception, but something that you might not see every day. Let me put it that way. Dis and Alma dwell in Erebor. Now, both of these are female, to be correct. So, yep. So, Tatmanian ni Urdek. Now, why am I saying it's special? Because you need to have a group of all females to use these forms. The locations where people can dwell. Kur Tatmanin, where do they dwell? Let me go over those. So we have a house or building is Zahar, right? If it's a plural, then it's Zahar. So you have to leave a little pause in between those two consonants. So you're duplicating the consonant in this form. So Zahar becomes Zahar. Both need to be pronounced. A little bit of a pause in between. Then a hall of mansion is Doom. The plural of that, or Doom rather, the plural of that is Doom. So Doom, Doom. Zahar, Zahar. Doom, Doom. Hobbit hole, Malkoon, Zahar. Here we keep the extended U vowel, by the way. So we don't lose it. Why don't we lose it? Because Zahar doesn't have an extended vowel. So literally it means Hobbit house. That's what it means. Hobbit hole. So Malkoon, Zahar. And then the plural takes the same plural as we see in Zahar. So Malkoon, Zahar. Then caves or caverns, if you will. One cave is Gairu. Two caves is Agar. So Ze Gairu, Nu Agar. One cave, two caves. So gairu and agar. And then you see the same form happening with mines, a mine. So taiku, attack. You see that these are the same type of noun. You know, they use the same vowels and the same plural kind of structure happening here as well. So gairu, agar, taiku, attack. Then overall, if we, anything where you can actually dwell, where you can actually live, a dwelling we call tumnu, and the dwellings is tumun, right? So this is where people dwell. Now, what we're going to do is answer a couple of questions with the very basic kun, which means yes, and then lu, which means no. Notice as well there's a glottal stop, so it's not lu, but lu. A little bit of a push at the end there. So we're going to answer things with, sometimes we're going to answer with yes, sometimes we're going to answer with no, sometimes we won't need those as well. So the first question that we have here is Kur Malkan Tatmanin. Let's start with translating what we have here. Kur Malkan Tatmanin. Who can translate this? What does it mean? Yep. Where do the hobbits dwell? So literally, where hobbits they dwell, right? So where do the hobbits dwell? Now, if we want to just simply say the location that they dwell, it's right up there. It's listed on the slide. But we could say hobbits dwell in, and then whatever it is. So anybody want to give that a go? The hobbits dwell in hobbit holes, right? That's our answer. So what would that be in Neo-Khuzdul? Yep, perfect. So we have here Malkan Tatmanin ni Malkun Zahar. Now I did add the plural here as well, because you could say hobbits live in a hobbit hole, but you could also say hobbits live in hobbit holes, right? So you have the choice between, whatever specifically you want to say. Right. Kur Khazad Tatmanin. So I'm assuming everybody understands now what this means. So we're not going to translate that. We're going to directly go to the answer. The answer to the question, Kur Khazad Tatmanin. Yep, that's it. Now, this one might have some eyebrows here. Kur Kafash Tatmanin. Now, Kafash, you might not know, hence, or you probably will not know, hence me giving you a bit of a hint of what they mean. So those are bats, as you can see. So Kur Kafash. Kafash is bats. Kur Kafash Tatmanin. So as you might have noticed, we're always, or almost always, using the same Tatmanin form here because, again, we don't know the gender specifically. They're going to be groups of males and females together there, even, in bats, same thing. So what we're doing here is just the location specifically, looking at Kur Tatmanin, where do they dwell? So the question, Kur Kafash Tatmanin, what would the answer be? Yep, so Kafash Tatmanin ni Agar or Gairu. So in a cave or in caves, Agar. Then the last one, let me just go through this one here. Khazad, it might be the last one, let me see. Khazad Tatmanin ni Taiku. So, the answer yes is kun or lu is no. So my question here is, Khazad Tatmanin ni Taiku. Lu Khazad Tatmanin ni Dum. So do dwarves live in a mine? No, they work in a mine. So they don't dwell in a mine. They work in a mine. So lu, no. Dwarves, Khazad Tatmanin ni Dum. Okay, Atan Tatmanin ni Zahar. Atan is the word for men. Men, Atan. Atan Tatmanin ni Zahar. What do you think the answer would be? Yep. or zahar, yeah, if you're, using the plural. So kun is indeed yes. Atan tatmanin ni zahar or ni zahar. Okay, now we're looking for what form would we add here. So these ra'alma, so two females, something something nidum. Yep, tatmanian. Kun, these ra'alma, tatmanian nidum. So they live in a hall. So we're not using doom, but the question is here. So these and Alma dwell in a hall? Yes, these and Alma, they dwell. Then the female form, tatmanian, ni dum, in a hall. Or in the hall. Right, then, torin radis, something something, ni dum. Kun torin radis, tatmanin, as you said, nidum. Why? Because we got a male and a female in a group. That's going to take the male form. So, kun torin radis tatmanin nidum. Then, question. Urdek tati malkun zahar? Urdek tati malkun zahar? Bingo, yeah. So, Lu, first of all, what is the question here? The question is, Urdek, so Erebor, the halls of Erebor. Tati, is it. Now, one thing you might say, wait, the halls of Erebor is plural, then why do we use the he or it form? Well, the reason is that's called a collective plural, right? There's a couple of examples that in a previous lesson as well, I think. So, Urdeg, is it. So, Erebor, is it a hobbit hole? No, Erebor is not a hobbit hole, right? Erebor is a hall, a mansion, right? So, Lu Urdeg tati dum. Right. So what we're going to do now is use a couple of these words to locate things. So we have kurtati, where is it? And we're going to keep these words on our slide, by the way, so you don't need to remember them by heart. So the words are nisdurul, meaning above, ni, in, which we've seen just now. Then aya, on or upon. Now, sometimes it's written I. So aya can be abbreviated, if you will, can be shortened to I. That is if the word that you are attaching it to is not a vowel. So you cannot say, you could, for instance, say I zahar, which means on or upon the house, right? I zahar. You could not say I urdek, because that, even with the glottal stop, connects it to a vowel, right? So just saying aya is the complete form, I the shortened one. Okay, this one again is a bit of a, well, it's not as difficult as it looks to pronounce. You have like four consonants in a row at the back there. That is because we're gonna use the schwa sound in those. So the way to pronounce this next to or to the side is durat huk. Durat huk. That is how you pronounce it. Durat huk. So there's no vowel in there, or at least it's not written, but there is a clear vowel between the th and the kh sound. So durat huk. We literally rathuk means hand. Rathuk. So to the hand. That is literally what it means. Do to rathuk, hand. So next to the sides, durathuk, to the hands. That's literally what it means. Then Aifbar is in front. If we want to say in front of, it's Aifbaru. It becomes a construct form. We add a U to it. So in front, Aifbar, Aifbaru, in front of. Then behind or after, Aktu. Under or beneath, Undu. That's a pretty easy one to remember, I think. Under, Undu. Sounds very, very simple. So Undu, under, beneath. Even this one, tur and through, fairly similar, I think. So one easy way to remember. And then between or among is niktunul. So going over those again, nisdurul ni, aya, durathuk, aifbar or aifbaru, aktu, undu, tur, niktunul. So we're going to keep those on our board and we're going to ask ourselves the questions, where is it or where are they? Kur tati, kur tatin. The dragon is above Erebor. So we're going to use these words for it. Let me give you an example. Usluk, and you can even omit tati here. Why? Because we're already mentioning what the subject is, which is the dragon, usluk. So we don't need to write tati. So we can just say usluk nizdurul urt. The dragon is above, nizdurul is above, as mentioned there on the slide, urt. Right, next one. This is in her house. So I'm gonna give you that one. Dis Tatia, again, you can drop that one. Ni Zahardia. Why is it Zahardia? Because it's her house, right? Dis Tatia ni Zahardia. Ni, that's the word we're looking for in here on location. Then, next one. Torin is next to his halls. Anybody want to try this one? Torin is next to his halls. Here we go. Torin, and then you can omit tati as you've done. Durathuk doomhu, his halls. Perfect, nicely done. So it wasn't an easy one as well because you had the Durathuk, which is not an easy one to pronounce. So Torin, and again, mind, which you did, that it's not Thorin that we're saying in Neo-Khuzdul, but Torin, because there's no th sounds in Neo-Khuzdul. So Torin, Tati, Durathuk, Doomhu. Thorin is next to his halls. What he's doing next to his halls, I don't know, but he's next to his halls. Borin is between the mine and our hall. So I'll do that one. We'll do that one together. Borin is between the mine and our hall. So Borin, and then we can say is. So that would be Tati. We can omit that. Why is it Tati? Because it's he is. Then between, we're looking for the word niktunul. Niktunul. Borin Tati niktunul. Then the mine and our hall. So the mine is Taiku. Ra dum ma, our hall. So we saw that earlier. It's a bit early to kind of push that onto you guys already, but our is ma, so dum ma. Okay, next one. The hobbits dwell next to the dwarves. Anybody want to try this? The hobbits dwell next to the dwarves. So hobbit, as you said, is malkun, right? The plural is malkan. Okay, so what one ze malkun, one hobbit, nu malkan, two hobbits. So the hobbits, and then they dwell. What would they dwell be? Because, you know, we're talking about they and then a mixed group, we assume. So they dwell. Tatmanin. So malkan, tatmanin, and then next to is Durathuk, as listed there. And then to the dwarves, Durathuk, next to the dwarves, Kazat. Now, one thing that I want to point out here, and it's fairly challenging there. So I will not, you know, there's no problem of getting this wrong. It's a lot of new stuff at once. So no worries there at all. One thing that I want to point out is that it's not Durathuku, right? You don't have to add the u of or to, because next to is already in there. It literally means to the hand. The do is already in there. So I'm just saying, sometimes like in front of, you add an u there. It's just Durathuk. Durathuk is next to. So Malkan, Tatmanin, Durathuk, Kazat. Then next one, the men dwell in their houses. So we saw men is Atan. Then they, it again is Tatmanin, right? So they dwell. Ni, and then houses, their houses. How would you say their houses? Yep, exactly. So Atan, the men, Tatmanin, they dwell in Zahar Hun. Now, it's not Zahar Hun, because otherwise it would just be one house. It's Zahar. Again, a little bit of a tiny little pause in between there, between those two twinned consonants. Zahar Hun. So Atan, Tatmanin, ni Zahar Hun. The mine is behind Thorin's halls. So Taiku is the word for mine, which we've seen earlier, is behind. So if we look at this overview here, behind is Aktu, Aktu. And then Thorin's halls, which you've seen before, is Torinoldum. So that gives us Taiku, and we could use Tati here, but we don't need to. Taiku, Aktu, Torinoldum. Then the hobbit is upon the hobbit hole. So a hobbit, as we've established, where the hobbit is Malkun, is upon the hobbit hole. So upon would be Aya, but you could also use I, you could shorten it. Why? Because hobbit hole is Malkun Zahar. So that starts with a consonant. So you could say I Malkun Zahar, or you could say Aya Malkun Zahar. One of those. So that's what you could use with I, as seen in I menu, Baruch Hazad, I menu, upon you. And this is another form of you, by the way. That's the not so polite you, but that's more on that in much later lessons. Right. Moving swiftly forward. Kud maglibi udu. If you know that udu means about, and the other words we've just seen, what do you think kud maglibi udu means? Yep. So kud is what, and then we talk maglibi. So we saw that, with a lot of these, or with all of them, we forms, you add M to your first person form. So ati becomes mati, atmani becomes matmani. So you add the M to indicate we. So here as well, aglibi becomes maglibi. So we talk. So aglibi is I speak, I talk. Maglibi is we talk, we speak. So kud, what we speak about. What are we speaking about? That is what we're seeing here. So what I want to say is something is to the north of, to the east of, to the south of, to the west of. This is what you'd use. Faham, north, nud, east, farak, south, zelem, west. The only thing you need to remember is to the west of, to the south of. So we're going to add a U to that to make it a construct state. So how would you say that? For instance, giving you an example here, Bitkin, Bri, right, is to the west of Rivendell, right? Buzra Burmu Bizar. So that would be Bitkin Tati Du Zelemu, to the west of, and then Buzra Burmu Bizar. That's an example, right? It's to the west of. Other example here, Bizar Tati Du Faraku Urdek. So Dale, Bizar, is to the south of Farak, south of Faraku, Urdek. So Erebor. Right. What can we say about Bitkin in relation to, so Bri in relation to Hobbiton, Malkun Itnin. So to be clear here, folks, the Bitkin is the yellow marker on the map, and Hobbiton is the purple marker. So to be clear, Bri is to the east of. So how would we say Bri is to the east of Hobbiton? So absolutely spot on. So Bitkin, Bri, is to the east. So is Tati Du, to, and then east of Nudu. So Nud is east, and then east of is Nudu, Nudu, and then Malkun Itnin, Hobbiton. So what we can say about these two, Torinoldum, which is the green little dot, Torinoldum, which is all the way to the west, and Zirin Hanat, which is all the way to the east. So Torinoldum is to the west of Zirin Hanat, of the Iron Hills. So how would we say Thorin's Halls is to the west of the Iron Hills? So Torinoldum Tati Du Zelemu, west of Zirin Hanat. the Iron Hills. And it's all the way to the west of, because it's just complete opposites on the map. Right, so that's general. Now, closing off this little lovely picture here of the family that we know. Now, something seems to be happening here. I think it's pretty clear what. Inad Nordgedul. So, Gedul, you should already know from the first lessons. Gedul. Anybody remind everybody what Gedul is? Happy. Yes, joyful, happy. Gedul. Happy. So, if there's another word in there that you already know, which is Nurt. Anybody can recall what Nurt means? Day. So we have something, day, happy. So Inat means birth. Inat is a birth. So birthday, happy. So happy birthday. Inat Nordgedul. So if anybody is having their birthday, then at least you know what to say in Dwarvish. Inat Nordgedul. Happy birthday. So it seems that our characters here, so we have Ugro Renalma looking at the what seems to be the birthday girl Gilta, with her father Ugroi, her aunt Girena, and then her brothers Ili and Gili, and then her uncle Ugromi. We're seeing a lot of things on the table as well. We're seeing nanag, which are flowers. We're seeing a kasab, which is a cake. Furthermore, there are kajjam, which are presents. Again, there's a little pause there, and I exaggerated the pause a little bit this time, but it's kajjam, kajjam. There's a little pause in there. Both need to be pronounced. I think you can already know what present is going to be. Kajam, like zahar, zahar. Kajam, kajjam. There's that little pause in there. Furthermore, we are putting all of that on a table. The table is called a raban. And there's also candles on the cake. The dinak are the candles. And we're going to use all of these words, or at least as much as we can. Oh, let's not forget about the amrag imbar, which is the party horn. Amrag is party or feast, and imbar is horn. Then to the side, or next to durathuk, I or aya is on or upon, and then in front, I've don't forget, in front of, you have to add that, I've baru. Right, as an example here, the cake is in front of Gilta and Girena, would be kasab I've baru, Gilta ra Girena. So the cake, kasab, is in front. In this case, we have omitted tati. All right, we could have said kasab tati I've baru, Gilta ra Girena, but there's no need for it because we already know what the subject is, which is cake, kasab. So we can omit the is in the cake is in front of. We can just leave that out. So cake in front of Gilta and Girena. No need for that. So kasab I've baru Gilta ra Girena. So what can we say about Gili? So we could, for instance, say that Gili is next to the sides, next to someone, for instance. So if somebody wants to give that a go, yeah, you could say I've baru in front of, he's in front of. You'd also say, well, you know, the person looking at this picture could also say that he's next to Ili, right? Durat huk Ili, could also say that. So yeah, in this case, Gili is in front of Ugromi. So Gili, I've baru Ugromi, could say that. What could we say about the presents, the kajjam? So anybody want to give that a go? Presents are indeed on the table. So kajjam, I raban, and we can say I. We don't need to say aya because it starts with the R. But you could say aya raban if you want, but you could just shorten it to I raban. Right, next one, nanag. Nanag are flowers. What can we say about flowers? We can also say that they are I raban. Yeah, they're also on the table. But apart from that, what could we say about nanag? Yep, it's next to the cake. So nanag durat huk kasab, or kasab rather, cake. And then there's a lot of things on the table. The table itself, anything You could suggest of what we could say about the table, Raban. Yeah, you could say that. I mean, Ugror is next to the table, right? So you could say the table is next to Ugror. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. I mean, he's next to it. He's not behind it or in front of it. So Raban durat hek Ugror. Yep, very well. Very good. Right, the dinak. Dinak are the candles. What could we say about that? Dinak ay kasap. The candles are on the cake. I'm talking about candles on the cake. If I ask you the question, Gilta tatia zur ayara etarul, and I'm going to translate that for you. So, Gilta is how many years old. Etarul means many. Etarul. And ayaras means years. And by the way, a very easy way to remember ayaras is it has the exact same consonants. YRS, like in years. So that's a very easy one to remember. Ayaras, years. Just saying, that's a pretty nifty tip there. Etarul, many. So, Gilta is how many years old? And in Neo-Khuzdul, can anybody tell me how many years old she is? Yep, Gimon. There's 8 candles on the cake. Gimon is 8. So we could say Gilta Tatia Ayaras Gimon, because we're always going to say the noun first and then the number. Because remember, it is noun, number, and then your adjective. So to be clear, Gilta Tatia Ayaras Gimon. So Gilta is, we could remove actually the Tatia if you want. To be clear here, in English, the line translate as Gilta is how many years old. You don't need that. In Dwarvish, you can just say Gilta is how many years. That's literally what you would say, not years old. That's a typical English expression. A lot of languages, don't have that. Like in French, is you have that many years. It's pretty much the same thing in a lot of languages. But so just to be clear, you don't need to add Gamil next to it, because that would mean she is old or, something old, which is not the case. Right. Okay. That's it, folks, for this week. So read it again, please. Then fill in the exercises. Practice with the flashcards. Rather important to repeat those when you can, because it helps tremendously with the memory of the words. Cool. Okay, if nothing else, and if you have questions, guys, then you know where to find me. Have a very good evening. Shamuk.